if you want to lead people, if you want people to buy into you, you have to have a strong sense of identity, because if you don't know who you are, then other people don't know who you are, and it's certainly not going to buy into you.
You are now listening to the podcast where authors inspire listeners to become authors, the Going North Podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer, best-selling author, and book enthusiast, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be listening to a different author that will inspire you to join the business of immortality, known as authorship. Now let the fun begin. Today's episode is sponsored by book number 2 from Dom Brightman, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. It is the field guide to help unleash the elite performer that is inside of you. Cop it today on Amazon.com or heading over to dombrightman.com and snag it in book, ebook, and audio book, so that way you can take it on the go and get yourself on the go to your northbound success. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North Podcast, we got another super special, awesome human for you today, courtesy of the site you love to love and you love to love even more, known as podmatch.com, the site where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're in. And today's guest is cooler than 3 cucumbers. That's right, indeed. And your folks are probably like, man, Dom with these cucumbers and the coolness meters. He's got cucumber ranges all day. It's usually cooler than 2 cucumbers. Why 3? Well, it's 3 because we're both MLTers, baby. That's right, indeed. We got a fellow Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member on the show, baby. That's right, indeed. And he's joined the business of immortality because he's a best-selling author, industry influencer, coach, speaker, educator, and mentor. So let's give it up for the TK, the terrific and kind, the one and only Tom Kereszti. How you doing today, Tom?
Living the dream. Thanks for having me, Dom. And I've never had 3 cucumbers before. This is the first for me. So thank you. I've heard of 3 Pinocchios, but never heard of 3 cucumbers. So that's the first for me. It sounds pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah. That's right, indeed. Just taking good old sayings and cliches, flipping them on their head and driving them into the ground until folks keep laughing or stop laughing.
Yeah, and in your introduction, you even called me a human being. So that's like, I'm a human being. I got 3 cucumbers. I mean, what else could I ask for? This is perfect day.
Woohoo! That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. A perfect day, indeed. So, my goodness, as with all perfect days, they don't always start perfect, considering maybe the days before, the years before, because I'm pretty sure there was a journey that led to the Tom that you are today. So, mine filling in any cavities I may have missed about you and inform the folks living under rocks who is the terrific Tom himself, since it's your first time on the podcast.
Well, I got a lot of gray hairs. We're not on video, we're on audio only. But if you looked at me and say, hey, man, this guy got a lot of gray hairs. And all that means, I guess they say when you have gray hairs, you got some wisdom. So somewhere along the line, over the last 60 plus years, life has slapped me upside down the head and picked me up and slapped me down and picked me up and slapped me down and picked me up. And along the way, it's been a fun ride. And I learned some stuff. They say that experience is just things that happen to you. And if you don't learn from it, you don't gain wisdom. So, yeah, I've got a lot of stories to share, and I'm not sure where to start.
Ooh, that's right, indeed. Lots of stories, indeed. Lots of stories, indeed. So, my goodness, I usually ask this later in the interview, but hey, I'll just pop it out now. So, I'm here, your fellow believer, indeed. Heck, a lot of JMTers are usually fellow believers. So, how did you become a Christian, my man?
Well, I never met myself. I'm sure they exist, but I never met a Christian that basically said, life is perfect. Everything is going real well. And my job is great. My family is great. Or my, party life is great, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I think I'll become a Christian now. I've never seen that. Usually, most guys that become Christians, or most women become Christians, the life slapped them upside down the head. And that's pretty much what happened to me. I was a kid, I was Catholics, and, Catholic kids, I'm not sure they're Christian or what they are. They're more about habits. So I didn't really know too much about Christianity as a Catholic. And then, when I went overseas and I started going to non-denominational churches because overseas, Catholic churches are everywhere, and the local country, it's going to be in a local language. So kind of couldn't go there and understand what was going on during the mass. So we found non-denominational churches. And then about 1994, I got slapped over the head with a setback. And that's when I became a born again for the second time in my life.
Oh, wow. So that means 30-year anniversary next year.
Yeah, it's been a process. It's been a journey. And it's far from perfect because I'm far from perfect. But hey, each day is better than the day before. I learned tomorrow. I learned the day after. I learned the day after that. And, one day I'll be 6 foot under and I'll stop learning.
At least in this form, anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, my goodness, so since 1994, my goodness, how has faith played in your business, my man?
Well, I have a very simple theory, and that says you can have two identical businesses selling two identical products in two identical markets. One business is run by Christian principles, the other business is not run by Christian principles. I would say that the one that is being run by Christian principles will come out ahead every time. It's just sound business logic. And look, many companies have certain values, certain cultures that helps them excel. And it's based on Christian principles. They don't call it that. They may not even know it, but it is based on that. And you have guys like, Stephen Covey was the first pioneer, and John Maxwell is the new pioneer of taking Christian business principles and bringing them to business and not really calling him that. Covey never talked about the 7 effective habits as Christian principles. He just talked about the 7 effective habits. John Maxwell doesn't talk about the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership that are Christian principles. They just are. In my book, I don't talk about the 5 or 4 keys to leadership success as Christian principles, but yet they are based on that. So that's how it plays a role in my business. And then also like to be involved. And I lived all over the world. And whenever I lived in the world, I always plugged into the local church. And there I always networked with other business leaders. And we've always brought value to the community, to the business community by taking a leadership role in, some type of business ministry. The fact is, nobody has any reservations about getting on a plane and flying halfway across the world to do a mission trip, when all they really have to do is show up at the office. And that's a great mission field right then and there. So our businesses, the number of people that we touch, I think somebody said this, if you're a business owner and you basically have like maybe 20 or 30 customers and a number of reach that you get through there, through your suppliers, through your customers, etc., you're probably reaching as many souls as a congregation of a couple of thousand people.
Definitely say that again, indeed. Because yeah, that's the major thing. Heck, even back when was in late high school, probably early college, was like, oh, your missions work, it's amazing. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you can actually be a missionary right where you are just by living a life that's pleasing to God, and then other folks just really asking you about, and then just sharing a testimony right then and there. You don't have to always go out all the way to the other side of the globe and reach out to people when they're, hey, there's still some people that are quote unquote lost right here where we at home.
And more are lost right now because we're becoming more of a secular society than ever. So there's uh, there's a dying need for guys like you and I today more than ever, because just more and more people are walking away from church. More and more people are walking away from their faith. We're just becoming a more secular society. And also in the different generations, I mean, the newer generation, they love to try different things. So try a little bit of Christianity. They call it, I don't think they call it faith anymore. They call it spiritualism or something like that. So everybody has spiritual experiences or faith, and it's all kinds of different experiences, but it's not really based on Christ. It's based on different religions. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's very, very kind of different than what I'm accustomed to.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's right indeed. It's right indeed. It's like, hey, you thought there was a fork in the road, but hey, now there's a fork and a spoon, and then there's a salad spoon. And it's like, hey, you got all these different roads to travel now. It's like, oh man, you think you're going one way, but it's like, nope, you got so many more choices now. You can be spiritual. We got a whole fruit salad for you now. And it's like, oh, confusion. Hooray. Not really.
Well, look, we see it in our society today, right? We have this new paradigm in our society to say, okay, what do I perceive? What is real to me? And we're getting away more and more from absolute truth, and we're getting more and more close to the relative truth. And what is true to you may not be true to me, and may not be true to the third person. And nobody really has an absolute truth. I mean, you know, combining, for example, business and faith. Back in the 80s, used to work for this large multinational company, and I called it a salami effect. Right? You basically, they would take a product, they would launch it with all kinds of great raw materials in it, ingredients, and advertise it, and customers would buy it because it was a great product. And then inevitably, about 9 months later, somebody would come in and say, hey, let's do some cost reduction. Let's kind of take some active ingredients out of this product and see if the consumer notices. So, they reformulate it, take some active ingredients out, and reformulate the product, try it with the customers, and the customers still liked it. Then 9 months later, they do it again, and then reduce more of the active ingredients, right? And then again, nobody notices, and they still keep buying our product. And they probably do this about 4 or 5 times, and then all of a sudden sales would just plummet. And the customers, the consumers, finally woke up and said, hey, this product is not performing the way they used to. And then it just kind of fell off the grid and wasn't selling, and people were not buying anymore. And I call it a salami effect, because you take one slice of salami and you don't notice, right? Then you take another slice away and you don't notice, and you take a third slice away, you don't notice it. But before you know it, the whole freaking roll of salami is gone, right? And that's pretty much what's happening in our society. You kind of just take a little bit and take it away, and hey, nobody would notice that we don't do prayers in school. Oh, nobody notices that we don't do pledge allegiance in school. And now we slice the salami so many ways and so many times that we're in a society where it's upside down. It's totally upside down with what ethical values that we have, all in the name of inclusiveness, of everything else. But it's actually upside down. It just, we talk God of our society, and then we wonder why we have mass shootings. We wonder why we have all the craziness in the world. It's simply because God is gone out of our society, and our values are totally upside down, and they're gone. And it's just a salami effect. Over the last 50, 60, 70 years, we kept slicing the salami and taking a slice away. And now we're in a society which is totally upside down.
Definitely upside down indeed. It's like, hey, why is the pyramid upside down? Saying how it's supposed to work. It's not going into the ground, it's spinning like a dreidel. Make it stop.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's pretty interesting, the salami effect, too, because it's like, oh, just keep slicing away at it, and things disappear indeed. So, my goodness, my goodness. So, with that, principle indeed for folks to keep in mind when it comes to, I guess, keeping their deli intact. Is there anything that you picked up in business internationally that's made you a better businessman as opposed to just doing simply business only in the US?
Well, yeah, the world is very different. You come across folks in Africa, you come across folks in Asia, you come across folks in Latin America, in Europe, North America. I mean, our habits are very, very different. I would say the largest difference for me is, in the US, we are so focused on business, while other parts of the world, people are a lot more focused on relationships. So, as an example, um, I was also working in Mexico for a while, and in Mexico, whenever you are introduced to a potential customer or potential business partner, um, you you just assume that the person is representing, even a multinational company, has a really reputable product, and you just assume that. But the first thing that you focus on is getting to know that individual. So it's very common, as you're building business in Mexico, to say, okay, well, I like to meet your wife. I like to meet your family, because that's also a good reflection of who you are as an individual. So you'll have a number of different meetings with families, with individuals, to learn who are you doing business with, right? And again, the assumption is there that once I like you as an individual and I trust you and I can do business with you, I'm just assuming that the product you represent is also good, right? And so many times I've seen North American companies come down, going into the conference room with their fancy PowerPoint presentations and coming out high fiving each other, say, "Yeah, man, we killed it, we got the deal, we got the deal." And the local counterparts would just smile at him, say, "Yep, thank you very much for coming, and we'll get back to you. We'll talk to you next week." And those phone calls never came, right? Because there was no relationship building. And when I was in Eastern Europe, I can't tell you how many times I showed up with customers, and 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, I had to do a shot of the local moonshine because that was the custom there. So I was like, okay, well, let's do a shot at 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, but that's how you connected. That's how you related to the individual. So I would say, to me, that is probably the biggest difference, is really understanding the local customs and what makes them tick and how they do business, and really adapting to that, and really tying into that human nature, human connection. And it's not all about business like in the US, where we're constantly on the run, on the go food, get my Starbucks to the drive through, and I'm running from one meeting to the other meeting. And just why don't we just have a 2-hour lunch and get to know each other?
Ah, good deal indeed. Good deal indeed. Because yeah, and it makes so much sense too. Because America's still a very young nation, and it's like, hey, kind of like the youngest kid in the room. It's like, oh, let's get all this attention. Let's get things nice and fast and have all the attention on us, as opposed to the metaphorical older kids in older countries where it's like, hey, let's find out about your family so we can see what we're doing business with, or possibly wanting to do business with, and just really getting to know each other, especially outsiders too, because there's probably that instinctual defense mechanism, pretty sure a lot of folks have, where it's like, hey, let's make sure this person ain't kind of shifty. Make sure we can trust them.
Yeah, and what better way to know a little bit about you than your family, right? If you show up and your family is kind of, you can sense that. You can sense there's tension in the room. You can sense there may be tension between a husband and a wife. You can sense that maybe the wife is not too supportive of the husband, or vice versa. Maybe one individual is self-centered or whatever. And you pick up on those signs, and you can make some assumptions based on that to say, hey, if this is the way the guy treats and talks to his wife, I mean, how is he going to treat me and talk to me as a customer? How is he going to support me, right? And if you can, look at the spouse, and the spouse looks up to their husband or wife, because in this day, I mean, there's a lot of women leaders in companies also. So the supporting spouse may be a husband. Especially in the international market, you see a lot of women in leadership roles where the husband is really the caretaker, and this is a supporting spouse. And just you can gauge just the relationship and the proaction between the two individuals to say, okay, well, how's this person going to treat me as a customer, or how's this person going to treat me as a supplier or as a business partner? So that's I think is fairly important, and you have to do that. I call it the dance. You have to do a couple of dances with that individual to really get to know them a little bit before you kind of lock in a large deal, or you do a large business. Now, there's exceptions to that, because some small transactions may not require that much. Maybe you can get that across in a matter of several hours rather than several meetings, but still you have to build that trust with the individual. And yeah, I think it's more people oriented rather than process or product oriented, which is more the US.
Woohoo! That's right, indeed. Getting that knowledge, indeed. Knowledge about international business, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Stuff to keep in mind during those transactions, indeed, especially those big ones. That's right, indeed. The big ones you're looking for, indeed. So, my goodness, as with the entrepreneurial journey, there's going to be setbacks along the way that sometimes even end up as success stories later. So, has there been a really big setback in business that you had that actually ended up being a big success for you down the road?
Well, I would say everything that I started out, you have a tendency to fail in the beginning because you're learning. You're kind of failing, learning, failing, learning. But I never really could think of something where I totally flopped and totally failed and nothing happened. And I'm not Jeff Bezos, so also you can't say I kind of failed to learn, then I became a multi-billionaire. So I don't know how you measure success. That's a good question itself. Is how do you measure success? Do you measure it on size of the business, on revenue, on quality? I mean, I don't know. There's all kinds of measurements on how you measure success, and one person's measurement of success may be very different than somebody else's measurement of success. One person's measurement of success may be, hey, I can only work 4 hours or 5 hours a day and I get to spend quality time with my wife and my kids every day. Maybe that's their measure of success. And another person's measure of success may be, hey, I get to travel the world and see everything, and that's my measure of success. One person's measure of success may be, all right, I'm making bazillions of dollars, and that's monetary measurement is my measuring success. So, look, everybody ticks by a different clock. I met this gentleman one time, and he was driving a really expensive car. He was driving an over $100,000 car. So what do you do for a living? He goes, well, I'm a nurse. I'm like, you're a nurse? I said, how the heck or you make, I mean, how do you drive a, over $100,000 car as a nurse? So this gentleman was a private nurse, and he was a private nurse to a very wealthy man who did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So, this guy was
Wow.
a high flyer. But here's the thing, this high flyer has stage 4 cancer. That's why he needed this nurse on 24/7. Right. And with stage 4 cancer, one would think that he would kind of rethink his priorities and stuff, but no, he was just driven with mergers and acquisitions and buying businesses. And here's a guy with stage 4 cancer, and he's still getting on private airplanes, flying all over the world trying to do deals. That's how he's going out. That's going to be his legacy. So I mean, that was his measure of success. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I would want to do that if I had stage 4 cancer. I think I want to maybe reevaluate and say, okay, if I got a couple of years left or a couple of months left, how do I want to spend it? I don't think I want to jet all over the world buying and selling companies, but everybody has a different measure of success.
Oh, yeah. That's right indeed. It's like the good old metric system. That's right indeed. Kilometers to miles. You love to see it. Different measures of success. You'll love to see it. Indeed. Indeed. So my goodness, and with finding what really drives you like that, and that great example of the guy with the doing loving to do mergers and acquisitions. Like, I guess he wants to go out, buy more businesses, and do more deals. So my goodness, so how was it like to finally figure out your why, and how has it made you even stronger as an entrepreneur?
Well, figuring out my why is, I boil you down to three questions. And I read your script. I'm trying to find funny stories, but I'm listening to myself and I'm going, Tom, you're being so damn serious. Why'd you find out? So, I try to lighten up and do some funny stories around these things. So, so far I got to kind of reach in my portfolio and try to find some funny stories, but I found out my why, and it took me a while, right? It took me a while. And I encourage each individual to answer these three questions. And if you've heard me on different podcasts, then you probably heard this before. And answer these three questions for yourself. And once you get clarity on these three questions, you are going to lead a more successful and more fulfilling life. In fact, you will move from a job, and you'll move from a career and you'll move to a calling. And if you can live your calling, then I think you just live a much healthier life. So let me answer these three questions for myself. So the first question is, who are you? Right? And I'm a servant leader. So in any situation I find myself in, I find myself in a serving mentality. In fact, when I was CEO of a close to $400 million company, I thought I had the easiest job in a room because as a servant leader, really what I was more focused on is to make sure that we had a shared culture, we had a shared vision. Each one of my direct reports and then everybody that kind of reported to them understood how they contributed to that vision, how to live that culture, how to grow that company towards that vision. And then really my job was just to make sure that everybody understood that and that I would equip everybody. So they had the assets, they had the budgets, they had, all the things that they needed to be able to succeed and become successful in their portion of the total vision for the company, right? So my job was just to really serve them. I remember my marketing VP one time came up to me and said, "Hey Tom, we're doing a commercial. Can you come down to the shoot and kind of just chip in, let me know I don't feel so sure about it." So I could have said, "Look, you're the marketing VP, you figure it out." I said, "No, I'll go with him," and we kind of went down and I watched the commercial shoot. I had a lot of fun. We tested the commercial and it did pretty well. So I could have done that. What my sales director said to me, "Hey Tom, we got to go see. I got to go see one of the big buyers for one of the big companies, and I'm not sure if it was Carrefour or Walmart or one of those big guys, but I could have said, no, 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 you figure it out. You're the sales director." I said, no, no, of course I'll go with you. Of course I'll support you. Right. So it could be, servant leader from that perspective, right? It could be a servant leader for my family to say, "Hey, can you help with my homework, Dad?" Right. So I could say, "No, no, I'm too busy," or I can say, "No, I'm going to try to help you with the homework." And that's one part of my life I didn't get really right. I spent a lot more work in the balance of things. I spent a lot more time in work rather than spending time with some of the more personal things with my wife and my family and my kids. So, but my kids turned out really, really good. So I'm really, really happy. Uh, I love them dearly, and they're doing well in life. But anyway, getting back to the initial thought before I kind of veered off is know who you are. Have a very strong sense of identity of who you are, and that's equally important because if you want to lead people, if you want people to buy into you, you have to have a strong sense of identity, because if you don't know who you are, then other people don't know who you are, and it's certainly they're not going to buy into you, right? So understand who you are. That gives you a good direction. It gives you a stable ground to stand on, and people will look at you and say, "Yeah, I get Tom. I buy into Tom." Right, and especially when you're in a small business, that's extremely important, right? Because if you're working for a large business, they kind of buy into the brand. If you're in a small business and you're going from, let's say you work for, a company like Oracle, you work for a company like Coca-Cola or whatever, you're represent that brand, you're part of that brand, and people buy into you because maybe you're a senior executive in Coca-Cola. So they're just like, well, he must be a pretty smart dude or she must be a pretty smart lady if she's working in a senior position for Coca-Cola. And then, my revelation when I first started my own business, and I went from a perspective of hiring people with Harvard MBAs coming to work for me. And then I opened my business, and the first question was like, who the hell are you? Who the hell are you, Tom? And why should I work for you? Right? Because there is no brand, right? So when you're in a small business, people that team up with you, whether they're your employees, whether your customers, suppliers, etc., they buy into you. So you have to have a very strong identity of who you are, so those people buy into you. Then the second question is, what are you passionate about? Right? Because look, if you're not passionate about it, people are going to look at you and say, well, why should I follow? Right? I mean, Tom is not passionate about it. Why should I be passionate about it? So you better show some passion. You better love what you're doing. You better get up every morning at 7 o'clock. Can't wait to get started. Can't wait to do it. Right? And that's got to be on your body language. It's got to be in your blood. It's got to be in your face. So you got to be passionate about it. You have to be a disciple of what you're doing, right? And the third question is, what are you good at? And you have to have a clear answer for that, because nobody likes competence. So if you're not competent in something, nobody's going to follow you. Nobody's going to buy into you, because they say, well, this guy's, I don't know why he's doing what he's doing, because he's pretty bad at it. So you better be good at what you want to do. And then if you have those questions and you have clarity in those three questions, I'm willing to, well, there's no guarantees in life, but I'm willing to bet that you're going to lead a fulfilling life, right? So look, in those questions for me, right, I'm passionate about adding value to people, making companies better, making products better, making people better. And I'm pretty good at mentoring and leading, right? So I can use those three answers any part of my life. So if I say, look, I'm a servant leader, I'm passionate about making people better or companies better or products better, and I'm pretty good at mentoring leading, I can do that with my employees. So I can mentor my employees or I can mentor my kids, right? I can add value and make products better for my company, for my competitors. I can be a servant leader at my church. I can be a servant leader on my athletic team. So I don't have to reinvent myself. And I've heard this one time, they said, well, you have to be one way at work and you have to be a different way when you're in private life. And I said, that's just schizophrenic. I mean, every time change situation, you got to wear a different hat. I mean, how do you keep track? So just answer those 3 questions, get clarity on them, and then doesn't matter what life takes you. If you have clarity in those questions, wherever life takes you, you'll do okay.
Oh, 3 solid questions indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Yeah, especially that last one indeed about hey, know what you're good at. It's like, hey, you know what you're good at. Hey, that's a good way to find out. Hey, this is your strength zone, buddy. Stay in your strength zone. See where you can take that skill as far as you can go. That's right, indeed. Go to the North Pole and beyond. That's right, indeed. Maybe even go to Mars. Maybe even go to Pluto. Keep Pluto a state. That's how far you can go with your strength. Maybe you never know. You never know, indeed. So, my goodness. So, since you've been on quite a few podcast interviews already, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're on the guest side of the game?
Oh my goodness. Nobody ever asked me that question. So there's the question I wish somebody asked me because nobody ever asked me that. Is there a question somebody wish you asked? I don't know. I'm more reactive than yeah, I mean, no, I'm coming up blank. I'm coming up roses here. I'm coming up roses. Yeah, I wish somebody would ask me, what would I do different?
Ah, so what would you do different? Well, about anything, I guess. That's another question within the question. Like, what would you do different about, I don't know, life, business, a certain
Well,
year, certain week?
Here would be my answer. First of all, I probably wouldn't change a lot of things because if I try to change too many things, I think I would just screw up different things. I mean, I made plenty, plenty of
Right.
mistakes in my life, and I am where I am. If I did it differently, I probably would have made different mistakes, and it would have got me somewhere else. Who knows? It could be better, it could be worse. I don't know. As a servant of Christ and as a faith-based person, I mean, we all believe that, in fact, our journeys map up to us. And I think within a limitation, I mean, faith opens and closes doors, and it's just for me to choose which doors to go through. And after discernment, after prayer, I kind of say, okay, that door looks pretty good, so let me go through that one. So if I had to do it again, I don't know. I think if I chose different doors, like I said, I would make different mistakes and screw different things up. What I would do differently a little bit is I would definitely spend a little more time investing in my family. I think, I spent a lot more time at work, and I spent a lot more of my energy into my career. And I thank God that I was married, I am married to my wife, Kathy, and she did a wonderful job. While I was gone, while I was traveling, I was late at work with the kids. And to her credit, my kids turned out pretty good because of her. I hope to think I also had something to do with it, and I think I do. But it's been a good partnership because without her, I think it would have been a very different turnout. So she's done a great job and helping me raise the kids. But the one thing I would do differently if I could is I would spend a little more time with my kids. When I was when my daughter was about 14, and I don't know how the conversation came up, but I just remember my middle daughter was about 14. She said, "My God, Dad, I haven't seen you half my life," and that kind of shook my confidence a little bit when your 14-year-old says you haven't seen me half your life. So that was a little bit eye-opening for me, and I said, okay, well, I better reevaluate my priorities. And from there forward, I try to spend a lot more time with my kids. But by that time for the 14-year-old, it was a little bit late because she's, almost finished with high school. She was going to go off to college. So there was not a lot more time that I could spend with her. But yeah, that's the only thing I would really like to do a major difference is spend more time with the family, invest more time in the family, and maybe a little bit less time on my career.
I hear you indeed. I hear you indeed. Hope the good thing about spending more time with family, there's going to be some family meals. So, if your wonderful book, that's right indeed, C Suite and Beyond, Four Keys to Leadership Success. If that book were a food, what would it be and why?
It'd be a champagne cocktail. Champagne cocktail's got, it's got a little fizzle to it. It's got a little effervescence. It got a little bubbles. It got a little energy to it, and it's tasty. It's enjoyable. So I would say that because the book is kind of full with all kinds of stories, some fun stories, some interesting stories, and kind of illustrates some good life principles. So it's a fun, light read. I mean, it's not like a nice little champagne cocktail or a mimosa. That's nice and fluffy on a nice hot sunny day, and it's refreshing. And that's what I think the book is. It's just some fun stories, light stories, not too much theory. It's more about practical knowledge on some of the stuff that I shared with you today.
There you go. That's right indeed. The sham and the pain. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. First time someone referred to the book of champagne too, so that'll be great. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's
There you
right.
go. Get yourself a glass of champagne and start reading the book. See what happens.
That's right indeed. So my goodness, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
If I was 25 and I was in the current year,
That's right. You would wake up as a Gen Zer.
well, I'd probably get a tattoo because all my kids have tattoos. And when I was 25, when I was 25, tattoos weren't hip. But now I guess everybody in this generation gets tattoos. So yeah, I probably get a tattoo just about now. I don't know if I get, a whole bunch of them, but I think most of the tattoos my kids have has some kind of saying, some kind of writing, enjoy life, have no regrets or something like that. So, it's all about sayings about, how to live life. The other thing that I wish somebody told me when I was 25 was, hey, Tom, do you have a vision for where you want to be in 20, 30, 40, or 50 years? What's your vision for yourself? Nobody asked me that question, when I was in my early 20s. So I would, I would love to have that question asked to me right now as if I was 25 years old and said, Tom, what's your vision? Somebody said this the other day. He said, well, my vision is to own a house in 5 years. I said, well, that's a pretty good plan. That's a nice objective. Not really a vision. I mean, vision is something should be a lot more challenging. It's something that should continue to fuel you, to fuel your fire, to keep going and try to achieve that. Because they've Ramsey said it best. He said, "Do you have a cathedral vision?" Right? Because the guys that designed the cathedrals back in Europe hundreds of years ago, or thousands of years ago, those cathedrals took maybe 100, 150 years to build. So the guy that designed it wasn't around to see the end. So, somebody would say to me, Tom, you're 25. Do you have a cathedral vision for yourself? That'd be a pretty good question, and I don't think that matters if somebody's asking that question in this day and age in 2023, or they asked it in 2003 or 1993 or 1883. Right? I think it's time tested.
Woohoo! That's right indeed. Time tested indeed. That's right indeed. Have your own Sistine Chapel level vision, baby. That whole cathedral. That's right indeed. Have a whole cathedral. That's right indeed. Type of cathedral that'll make the painters blind from all the artwork they had to put on the ceiling. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Heck, there maybe even more day drinkers back in the day because of it. Let me stay. Like, I gotta get on the ceiling again.
By the way, Sistine Chapel is absolutely gorgeous. So highly recommended. If you can ever get there, it's you can't describe it until you're inside and looking at it.
Oh, I believe it. I definitely believe it. My goodness, like that wonderful piece of history right there. Like my goodness, and it's been around since the 1400s, which is crazy. It's like that's a preservation right there.
Yeah, and if you go into Sistine Chapel, they're very careful of it because they say, look, the two things that affect it is light and sound, right? So
Oh
that's what.
wow.
So they're very strict about any kind of flash photography or anything like that. So they're right on top of it, and then I call them the police. So anytime the noise level picks up in the Sistine Chapel, there's a guard that says, and everybody quiets down. So it's the shish police, right? But so it's got to be quiet there, and there's no flash photography, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
Wow. So they grabbed some old school librarians, huh?
I guess.
Telling them to shush. Oh man, oh man. So my goodness, there's art in the Sistine Chapel, and Noah Man put some great art into his wonderful book with all of his stories and tips and techniques for those looking to upgrade their leadership prowess. So for those need to cop some copies of your book and keep in contact with you and keep up with what you're doing, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Well, to get the book, it's pretty easy. Go to Amazon. I mean, you know, Amazon is all over the world, so it doesn't matter where your listeners are. If they do want to buy a book, just go to Amazon, look for C-Suite and Beyond, the 4 Keys to Leadership Success, or just look for my last name, which is Kereszti. It's a blessing and a curse because a curse in the sense that it's a tongue twister to pronounce, Kereszti. But there's probably about, if you Google the internet and you look for Tom Kereszti, I'll show up. I don't think anybody else shows up. Even with the last name Kereszti, probably my wife and my kids show up. Not much more. Maybe my sister. My sister's an MD in Boston, so she probably shows up. So it's pretty easy. Just Google my name. So you either say Kereszti.com and that will get you to my website, or you can say leadershipdisciples.com. That will get you my website. There's a contact form there you can fill out and just let me know how we can help. I'm happy to do so. And if you want to get some fun reading with a glass of champagne, I don't know if you can get a glass of champagne on Amazon. Maybe you can, maybe you can, but at least you can get it down at your local store and pour yourself a glass of champagne and sit by the fireside and read the book, which you can buy on Amazon.
Woohoo! Sweet. Well, there you have it, folks. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. It'll be a good time indeed. So cop some copies of Tom's book and share with some friends, family, cat, penguin, dog, heck, maybe even share it with a penguin that's riding a unicorn indeed. So that way that penguin knows it's in the C suite, which may actually be the U suite because of the unicorn horn. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, any parting words before we close up shop?
Just keep the good faith, my friend. Just continue to be a disciple. I try to be a disciple of leadership. I try to be a disciple of Christian-based leadership principles. So just walk in your faith, and you never know who's watching because people are always watching you. They're listening to you, Dom, and people are watching you, and your listeners. People are watching you as well to see what you're doing, how you're acting, and they'll make up their minds about you and about what they want to do based on your actions. So not so much about what you say, it's more about what you do. So just keep the good faith and act out your faith rather than just talk about it.
If you're hearing this part of the episode, that means you're one cool individual. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, and if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to share it with at least one other person in your network. Bonus points for 3, and be sure to check out the backlog too while you're at it, because there are hundreds of wonderful episodes to choose from as well.